Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. It is me, Rebel, and today we're going to do something a little different. I think I've been asked to do this before, so I'm going to try to film the whole process. So we are going to make one of my skirts. So yeah, I'm going to try to explain this to you really quick, what's going on here. So this is a pattern that I've cut out, and I use double-sided, as you can see, double-sided wrapping paper. This is about the only thing I had on hand. It's thick enough that it makes a good paper pattern, so this is what I'm using. So if you understand, this pattern runs directional this way. So this is up and down, and this is side to side. So I go 30 inches for mine because I am taller and I want to be a little below the knees. And it's 49 inches across. This is a little bit longer than a yard across. And most of the time, this works whenever I get the yard pre-cuts or if I just have, the solid yard. So I have this in 4 yards, but unfortunately, as you can see, the directional pattern of it is running horizontal, and I need it to be vertical, or however that goes. So if I laid my pattern down on it, there's my pattern. As you can see, this is up. So this is the length of the skirt and the width of the skirt. Well, you can see that the directional would be off on this. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to just lay this in the direction. Just match it up. And just cut it. And I'm just going to have to make sections out of this. I'm just going to have to sew the sections together. So that's probably what I'm going to have to do with this. This is folded over, so that should make it easy. So I'm going to have to make sections and then sew these sections together. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to pin and cut, pin and cut, pin and cut as many as I can, basically. And then once I get that done, we'll be back and I'm going to show you the band for the waist. And also, I think I might add pockets to this. I'm not quite for sure, but I do have a pocket cutout pattern, so we'll see. Okay, so I had to pause my Pioneer Woman so you didn't hear. But anyways, so now we're down to this is the waistband. And all these measurements are to me. So you would have to kind of measure it out to yourself. And I could go into detail in another video of how I got these patterns set for me. But anyways, the problem is, I was telling you about the directional flow, right? Well, if this is the waistband, I need the direction to go this way with the Santa heads. The problem is, I ain't got enough pattern here. So, on this instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wind up piecing it together. But, if you had to, I'm going to show you this. If you had to, you could put this on the diagonal of the pattern. They would just turn the heads just slightly, but it would be better than them running lengthways like this. So if you ever run into this issue, just turn it kind of at an angle like that, and it won't look so bad at all. Especially since this is just a waistband. Chances are, too, I would probably wear a belt with it, so the belt would hide this anyways. But what I'm actually going to do, because I have to cut 2 of these, a front and a back. Well, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to unfold this and cut one and then take it off and then cut the other. Instead of having it nice and folded and only have to cut once, and just having just one seam, I'm going to have 2 seams with it. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do that really quick. Waistband is going to be 5/8 of an inch allowance for the seam. Also, too, I'm going to cut out, while I'm thinking about it, I'll tell you some interfacing. This is a iron-on interfacing. This is for the waistband. You can see the gluey area. This will stick to your material, what this is going to do, this is going to stiffen up that waistband, and so it won't wrinkle or nothing. It just looks better using interfacing for that. And I might interface the pocket as well. I haven't decided yet, but I'm definitely going to put interfacing on the waistband. Okay, so I got to the point where I'm about to cut up my interfacing, and I laid down one of my pieces here so I know. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this just a tad bit bigger on each side. Because what I'm going to do after I do that, I'm going to cut that piece in half. So that way there's probably only about that much interfacing inside. Because it's just easier whenever I go to fold to do my seams and everything, that interfacing is not in the way, because it is kind of a thicker, it is a little bit thicker of a material. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to cut out the interfacing, and then I got my iron ready to go to glue it down. By the way, I want to tell you really quick, when you go to do the interfacing, you want to make sure that you're on the wrong side of the material. And also this interfacing, oh, there's a hair. One of my lovely hairs. Anyways, the interfacing has this shiny side. So you want to put that down on the fabric because that is the glue. So you want to do it like that. So yeah, I'm going to just iron it down. You just, a pretty hot iron, just a couple of seconds, and it glues right to the fabric. Okay, so interfacing is on, it's glued. So now what I'm going to do, so I'm going to fold this right side in and line it up. And basically we're going to fold that in half. We're going to iron it down. And then we will have the waistband done and ready for the next parts that are coming up later. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to iron this down. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to sew these two ends together. So basically I want to make sure that my Santas are running the right way, which would be this way. So I'm going to put the right sides together, and I'm just going to sew this end together, and we're going to leave this end open for whenever we go to put the skirt on. Okay, so I got my panels out. So what we're going to do is we're going to put right sides together. We're going to sew the ends. I will leave one section open for whenever I go to do the skirt. It just makes it easier if one of the sections are open. So now I'm just going to sew all these guys together. Okay, so this part is kind of tough for me to film, but what I'm doing is now I'm starting to gather the skirt onto the waistband. So I meet the right sides together, again, as usual. I also find the center of the skirt, which this is the center of it. So what I do is I match the center of the panels to the center of the waistband. So now what I'm doing is I'm working on one side of the waistband, and all I'm doing is just gathering the materials. So from this part, I find the halfway mark from here to here. Find the halfway, and then I put a pin there. And then in between the two halfway points, I put a pin in between there. So you're just kind of dividing, basically, like you would if you were cutting a pie. So you're just dividing out the sections, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep on pinning the gathers onto the waistband and sew this part of it, and then I will work on that part of it once I get done with this part. It just makes it a little easier if you do it in the two sections instead of trying to do it all at once. Plus, I'm a cheap ass, and this is all the pins I got. So I don't have very many pins, so I have to work with what I got. So I usually just do a section at a time. Okay, so we have it all sewed. So now what I'm going to do is, it was sewed like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press my edges inward like this. Also, you could use a serger. A lot of people do have sergers. I don't have sergers for these raw edges that are fraying. I just sew it. It doesn't bother me to have these fraying raw edges. As long as, like, at the bottom of the skirt with the hem, I make sure I folded it twice so that way it will, like, hide the raw edges like that. Also, at this point, once you get done folding and pressing, if you was going to do like I'm going to do, I'm going to completely sew together this skirt, but it would be this point before you sew it together. What you would do is you would sew it halfway up. So you would start at the bottom, sew halfway up, and stop at a certain point, and you could put a zipper in this skirt. I don't mess with zippers because I typically can't get these over my hips. So what I do is I put them over my head. So I don't need zippers or hooks or buttons or anything like that. I just slide it over my head. You can also, instead of making a waistband like this with that um, binding stuff that's inside of it, you could just leave it open and run you some elastic waistband through it, and then you can have an elastic band skirt that would help get it over like your hips and stuff. But this is just the lazy, easy way I do it. I just don't worry about the zippers and stuff like that. I just pull them over my head and it works just fine for me. So I'm going to go ahead and press this down, and then I'm going to go ahead and pin the two sides together that are still not together. And then we will work on the hem at the bottom of the skirt. So this is just a quick side note while I'm doing this ironing. Um, you do the ironing because this is a gathered skirt. You want the waist to try to be as flat as it could be. I mean, it's going to be hard even with those pleats. It's not going to be totally flat, but it's going to help. And it's also going to help these pleats kind of reinforce themselves. So you're going to have these pleats like, oh, that's where I need to be. That's how I need to stay. So that's a good thing about ironing. Also, this iron is on the highest setting. This is 100% cotton, so it can handle the highest setting. There's also no water. This is just a dry iron. And like I said, that you want this to be as flat as it could be since it is your waist, because you don't want a lot of bulk around your waist. So yeah, I'm going to continue to press all the way around. Alright, so I'm just going to do a quick voiceover right here. But basically what I'm doing is I'm hemming the bottom of the skirt. So what I'm doing is I'm taking it in 1 inch, and then I fold that over for another inch. So I'm taking that in basically 2 inches at the bottom of the skirt. So I'm going to pin it when I get it to the length I need, which is 1 inch. I'm going to pin it, and then I'm going to iron that down. So that way I get a good, clean, crisp edge for when I go to sew it. So now that I got the hem on the bottom of the skirt all sewed up and everything, now I'm working on the side that I left open. So I'm just matching up the waistband, making sure it's all together. Don't want any gaps, don't want it to overlap or nothing. Then I'm just going to pin down the bottom, or down the length of it, and we're just going to sew the sides up. So here is the finished skirt. I do have my petticoat underneath it just to give it some fullness. But I got this material at Hobby Lobby. It was on clearance for $3. So this skirt was well under $14 for me to make since I used around 4 yards. So I would highly suggest if you want an easy skirt like this that's really full, you do this pattern. Like I said, it's super easy to make, super easy to do, and they're super cute to do with any pattern. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Love y'all.